Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much for attending our third champ camp of the year. Joined with us is going to be an SEDC and ICDC competitor who competed in RFSM. So, Prashanth, if you could please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Prashant. I compete in both hospitality and tourism and marketing cluster roleplay and like related events. I think recently I've found success in RFSM restaurant and food services marketing. Um, so as Robert mentioned, I was able to win first place and second place at States, SCDC, and then was also able to be a finalist at ICDC. So I think I know something and I can share something about these hospitality roleplays.
Yeah, and thank you so much for coming on today. So, what do you love most about competing in RFSM?
I think just the uh scope, like basically like whenever the prompts are given, just like a quick anecdote, but like whenever I participated in like PHT and PMK events in my freshman year, I found that the role plays are usually limited to like a very specific scenarios or like very specific things like, oh, my coworker took an extra 10 minutes for lunch and am I gonna rat them out? Like things like that. And I really didn't find fun in there. But then whenever it came to like RFSM and those type of role plays, it was kind of more like a bigger scope because you know, different types of scenarios, and then it always involves a restaurant, but like there's just really like no way to like stop. Like the sky's the limit. They ask you about like management, they ask you about like how to deal with customers, they ask you about how to like, set up your own hospitality business, things like that. So just like the wide range of things and like anything could ever show up. I think it keeps it like pretty unique and like surprising all the time.
Yeah, and next question. How did you build the knowledge and skills necessary to succeed in RFSM?
So I'm gonna be super honest here. I think I built those skills like watching reels. So basically what I mean by this is that like whenever I came up on like an interesting reel by like Max Klimenko or somebody like that, and whenever they would talk about like a specific business, I would always like go to my notes app and like write it down. So if I open my notes app right now, I'll always have like a couple of anecdotes ready to go. For example, like the MacBook screen angle at Apple stores so that like customers interact with them, or like a New York shop that like beat Starbucks revenue just by having super good like customer service. So these kind of like anecdotes that came from like watching reels, watching media, things like that have always make me wonder about what really goes on in hospitality and tourism. And then beyond like these videos, obviously, I used to use books like Business Communication Today, like from testing, like DECA testing, I would go and see like where the questions are from and like try to get my hands on these books. Try to like read a little bit of those pages and try to apply them as well. So I think like mainly these books and then also like watching reels.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. So, what are some of the best strategies that you use when you're competing in RFSM?
I think the biggest tip I would have for anybody in RFSM or any role play in general is just to be memorable. And there's a right way to do this and a wrong way to do this. For me, what works best is, first of all, using these anecdotes and things that I've just mentioned, really strong, hardcore examples that aren't like made up on the spot. And also like something that's like super unique. Like I'm just going into a little tangent, like telling stories like in between of my role play, and like the judges always seem to like it. Like I always see them smiling. And then something else I try to do is like interact with something like the judge has. So like I always try to ask rhetorical questions, and like something that I tried my sophomore year is always starting my role play with like a question about something they had, like why did they choose to buy something they have, and like trying to like dive deep into it, like trying to take like business concepts out of it. And then at the same time, I would also like pretty much like hone up on my like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, things like that, like business concept that I would always use. And like that would make me look prepared, make me look like I know what I'm doing, and yeah, essentially that would help me succeed.
Yeah, so as someone who's competing, there's always some sort of like challenge that usually comes, especially when you're prepping or when you're trying to do your role plays. So, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced while preparing and competing in RFSM, and how specifically did you overcome them?
I think I started off with struggles like in general, like not only RFSM but like with role plays in general. I really struggled with like filling up the time and also making sure like my public speaking skills are like on par. And this is like mainly like end of freshman year, beginning of sophomore year. So what I found really helpful was like talking to the mirror and talking to like friends. I also had like a good officer team that would support me. So like really practicing these public speaking skills really helped me like, be able to talk nonstop, be able to, express my ideas well. Um, Beyond that, challenges. Uh, I think I also got like sick of saying the same two scenarios, like always like coming to the same examples. So like, I think I couldn't just like go watch more reels and like find more ideas, right? So I had to like actually go do some research and like try to find like actual scenarios. So I think yeah, it was just pretty much like holding up on like this knowledge and like these things that I could pull like stuff out of, and then also at the same time like holding public speaking skills just so I can like express my ideas well, whether it's a role play or a written event.
So, looking back, what's something that you would do differently during your time preparing for RFSM?
Uh, Something I would do differently. Okay. I think I could have definitely streamlined preparation. I feel like I wasted a lot of time whenever it came to like these gimmicks, you could say. It was like it took quite a time and like looking back, I don't think I would really change it, but like obviously like try to like speed it up a little bit. But like it took quite a time to like understand what works best, like through NorCal, through MiniCon, through like SCDC, ICDC. It really took time to understand like what works well with judges, what are the things they and like what would I do in case like they didn't answer my question, or like if I didn't have a good rhetorical question, things like that. Like just my general strategy for my role play. And then I remember that in the beginning, like I didn't have a sense of direction when I was like in those actual 10-15 minutes. Not like preparation, but like presenting time. I remember like not having like yeah, direction. Like I would just be kind of blabbering a little bit, and like also all the ideas would be there, but like no string to connect them through. But like what I understood later on through trial and error, which is necessarily not a bad thing, but if I can go back, I would eliminate it. Is that like my general strategy, which is like, go in, do like the hook, do like a couple steps, and then connect it with all this information that I'm saying, and then go through and then recap everything and then end off. So like trying to find that strategy took a really long time, and I could probably have like streamlined that.
Okay, so for the next question, this is going to be a little bit more specific toward your event, but pretty much as a food and service management event, I know there are a lot of specific terms that you need to know for management events, like things like I know you mentioned Maslow's hierarchy of need. That's something I also use, and I compete in a management event, and I know a lot of people also use that as well. What specific like technical terms do you always incorporate into your role play that you use like on and on again?
Okay. I think terms of like technical terms. I think one that I always use, somehow it always works its way in, is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Just because like I can always start with a rhetorical question and like connect it to like um, you know, why they bought something that they did, right? So like it usually works in most like management or like selling scenarios because you're trying to sell a product, like the restaurant, you're trying to sell food, but it's always beyond the food, right? So like I always try to dig deeper and be like, um, you know, uh, you know, like for example, like I remember at ICDC, I would like always try to go and like tell them that I'm trying to sell an experience. I'm not trying to sell like a product, right? And like you can easily use Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like always. I always find myself using that. And it's also quick and visual to use. And then I also find myself using SWOT analysis, because whenever it comes to management, you'll always have like competitors and like people you're trying to compare yourself against. So there's always like strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. So you can, compare yourself to other companies and see where you stand out. And usually I feel like there's something unique that I can drag out of like a specific company and like try to make a whole campaign around the thing. Um, and then I think some other terms that like a little bit like what less well known, but I'd be using like a lot of metric types of terms like CRM and then like whatever like uh whatever it calls for, like whatever the situation allows me to, there's things like CLV, like customer lifetime value, or things like that. A lot of like metrics, whenever it comes to data. Um, like a quick example was last year when they asked for like a new campaign, like a new marketing campaign for like an amusement park restaurant. I remember saying that I wanted to implement like a survey within like the registering like ticket kiosk, and then like I would measure the number of clicks that they had on the kiosk. So a lot of data metric terms, and this really just varies. Like it could just be anything. If it's social media, things like that. And then like the last term I would probably want to touch on is risk mitigation plan. Just because like people usually don't think of like risks. They always like try to spend up like the whole time thinking of like how could they implement all these wonderful ideas they have. But rather I feel like it's better to like take a step back. You don't need to go through every single like amazing idea you have, but rather to like focus on your best ones and then try to be a little bit unique, try to be more like a business owner when you think of like risks and potential things that you can that could happen, and this just makes you look way more mature. So just like in a role play style, just to recap, like data metrics, risk mitigation plan, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and then I forgot the second one, but yeah.
Okay, great. So, what unique skills do you think make someone stand out in RFSM compared to those other DECA events?
Um, I think when it comes to RFSM, you really just need to be able to talk. You need to be able to think like upfront. I feel like unlike compared to like the other events, and I like, kind of like touched on this before, but unlike the other events, there's really anything that could show up on a role play. Whenever it comes to RFSM, I always like find myself like looking through the practice ones on like NECA Plus and things like that, and it always like varies, right? Sometimes it's like how customers are acting up, or there's like some disturbance nearby, and then sometimes it's totally different, and it's like you're setting up a new branch of restaurants. And so like you just have to be ready for anything. And so to succeed in RFSM, or even like you could generalize this to a bunch of hospitality role plays and some marketing role plays like BSM, is that you just have to be ready for anything, like all different types of scenarios. So like for success, I think you just need to be able to like think on the spot. If you're good at speaking, I would recommend those events.
So in terms of like standing out, I know you mentioned you use different visuals like Maslow's like it's an easy visual to use, especially like the pyramid. What are some other types of visuals that you use in order to differentiate yourself from other people?
Um, I think there's a big misconception when it comes to visuals, and like I try to tell this to like Irvington members as well. Um, but you don't really have to do too much. Like you don't have to like push it too far with the visuals. The thing is, people usually like focus on yapping and like not really on the visuals or like coming up with things. So like people really don't like care. So as long as you have like two to three, maybe three to four good like high quality visuals that aren't like really filler, you can like try to grab the attention of your judge. Um, so one visual that I always find myself coming to is very simple. It's just a very quick like a recap of all the steps that I've gone through like in a marketing campaign or things like that. Um, for two reasons. One, just because the judge is super bored, they have to listen to so many role plays like throughout the whole day, and it's a very good recap. And then at the same time, it also looks like I fleshed out my thoughts in my preparation time before I came. So like, I might not write down everything I'm gonna say, right? But by writing down like the key points or like the two, three steps that I'm going through, it looks like I've really thought about this through like the prep time, and like it really shows to the judge that I know what I'm doing. So I always find myself doing like this steps outline. Sometimes I find myself doing like a conversion funnel kind of like sketch, which is like awareness and then interest, action, loyalty. And I always find myself like coming back to customer loyalty. And then whenever I can, and if I can't really find any like better visuals, what I find myself doing is trying to do a visual that's super related to, if I have time, related to one of the stories that I'm gonna tell, just so that it like cements in their mind. And then always, I just don't know, it always works out. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is always there. It just connects. And then to be honest, like I can't think of some of the more unique visuals I'm doing, but it really depends on the scenario and whatever the opportunity presents, just like take the risk and go for it.
Yeah, and I just got a question in the chat. So, do you have any tips or resources to study for the marketing cluster exam?
I think the biggest resource is just Quizlet. Quizlet is super helpful. There's also DECA Plus. There's I think four or two or four full marketing preparation tests. So I always use Quizlet. I always use Quizlet for like the last minute cramming as well, and then like DECA Plus. And then also I think what I've found helpful not only for marketing but for like the other hospitality ones is sometimes like looking through the test key, like the answer key, and looking at the book that they always reference. And if there's a book that I see like a lot, like showing up a lot, I try to take a look at that book. So far, like the only like recurring always showing up book that I've found is Business Communication Today, which really focuses on hospitality and marketing. And I found it helpful, like not reading the book, but like flipping through pages and like essentially finding the concepts where they're pulling the questions from. Um, yeah, so Quizlet, DECA Plus, and then like the test books.
Yeah, so I have another question. In terms of preparation, there are people that approach it different ways. Like a lot of people, they sort of spend more time on practical practice, like actually doing role plays. Other people, they just spend a ton of time on looking at the PIs and looking at sort of like definitions. I know you mentioned like a more niche way of like looking at reels, but how do you spend your time on like differentiating between PIs, between role plays for between role plays and maybe like reels for real world examples?
Yeah, just said Reels just because I think it's a little bit unique way to prepare, like looking at those accounts. But like it obviously has to be supplemented like by these foundations of like normal practice and like your traditional methods. And for me, that mainly consists of like, other than getting like these real world examples from like specific accounts, like specific Instagram accounts, I also try to like read news for like those real world examples. But then beyond that, I always find myself doing PI dictionary. PI dictionary is really helpful because it basically consists of almost every PI that could basically show up, and any person who's been like participating in DECA for quite some time now will know that PIs make up much of your score. Um, yeah, they basically carry your score. So if you're able to nail every PI, you're basically like in the clear to have like I'm pretty sure like approximately 80 points for getting down. But yeah. So I always use a PI dictionary, and then I always like talk to myself in the mirror sometimes, like trying to prepare. But I find myself doing more of like like a PI dictionary and those types of things, and like I kind of wing it with like the talking and speaking, just having like a couple good examples and like the strategy that I've always followed, and then combined with like the knowledge from these PIs and like real world news, media, things like that, is just yeah, it just empowers me to like go there and do it.
I think that a real world connection can definitely like help give some like relevance and things. So, what are some skills that you've gained from this event that you can connect to your future career that you may pursue?
Um, I think first of all, it's just being able to speak well. I think able to express your ideas well. Um, what people don't understand or may not realize is like role plays, although they're like fictional scenarios, they're obviously teaching you how to make business decisions as well. So in the future, if I have my own startup or if I work at a business or if I create something, I'll always have like some of these administration like kind of ideas always in my head, and this could be like supplemented by like higher education as well. And then also like yeah, just speaking really well, like being able to communicate. I feel like DECA sets people who do DECA like are set apart just by the principle that you can quickly and cleanly, if you know what I mean, like communicate. I think yeah, other than people skills, there's also like that strategic skills of like, incomplete information, making decisions. And then like, I mentioned like risk mitigation plans. So you're like thinking a little bit beyond thinking to risks, things like that. So it's like mainly business execution skills. some like strategic skills, and then like people and communication skills.
Yeah, and then one of the last questions. So, in terms of like managing your time, because you have 10 minutes for an individual event, which is kind of like a lot different from people who do team events, which they have like a whole 30 minutes. How do you manage that time? So, do you spend like a certain block doing the intro, a certain block doing PIs, that sort of thing?
Um, I think I just wing it kind of, but like there's like a little bit of a strategy there. Um, I always find myself going over, to be honest, like pretty close to the time limit. I always just like squeeze in the questions and I'm done. I never really save too much time for questions, which is a good thing, which is could also be a bad thing. But I feel like if you have like good ideas and able to talk for that long, it's a good thing. In terms of like planning, it's always like I think about 8.5 minutes of like actual speaking, maybe like 30 seconds of recapping like all my ideas, presenting my visuals one final time, things like that. And then like the last minute for questions, ending, closing, things like that. I feel like people budget too much time for questions. Like they'll cut themselves off at like 7, 8 minutes, which is a little too much, given the short time constraints, obviously. Um, yeah, I don't think I do too much like time blocking.
Yeah, so I think that wraps up the questions that we have prepared for you today. Thank you so much for coming on. You had super unique insights, and it was definitely super helpful to the audience. And I wish you the best this competition season.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I had a great time. I wish you all luck, and anyone who's watching, luck in the competition season as well.
Thank you, Prashant.